going on, Snapchat? It's Monday. But this is a different type of week, right? This is my last full week working. Not like ever, but I'm saying like we have a vacation next week. So this is my last like full week working. So I'm actually in the mood to work, surprisingly. Hey, this week I'm probably going to put the metal to the metal. I'm going to like really give it my all this week because I got to have this check for the next week for when we leave and shit. And I, for one, am ready for the vacation. I never really sat down and thought about it, but I do need a break from this job like a motherfucker. Not to say people here are bad, but I need a break from the job, as anybody would. You know, I've probably been grinding for like the last 6 months nonstop, so I wouldn't, without hollering no day off. So, there's that. Now, look, this is what my homeboy sent me. I didn't get the video or whatever, but I mean, the message in the text is enough for me to build around it. The text pretty much reads, after 15 years, God said this wasn't my husband. Now, I personally don't believe God had shit to do with this. I think her ass just got bored. And I always tell most motherfuckers, the worst thing you could be to a woman is boring. You could be toxic as fuck. You could be the motherfucker taking her through the ringer. You could be the one beating her ass. But you cannot be boring. Not only that, right? But just as a whole, I don't think the position of wife in today's day and time is valued with the same amount of prestige that it used to be. Like, being a wife used to be a thing. like used to be a position. But I also come to understand that times have changed. And I would say a lot of girls in this day and age are not necessarily trying to be wives like that, right? But then again, this is a little bit different because a motherfucker been with her husband for 15 years, right? And look, I'm just saying this as a guy that's been in a relationship for a while. If you don't know how to navigate the differences between you and the woman you're with, that shit will unravel itself. Me personally, my recent understanding, I've come to understand emotions a lot more, right? And how much that means to women in the overall relationship. Like, for instance, there was a guy that, asked the question on my timeline. Not my timeline, but I'm saying like it's a group that he's in. And he was like, well, how can I get my girlfriend to stop being emotional, right? And look, I think a lot of guys sometimes don't think emotions are a part of the relationship that you have to deal with. That's just a little detour, but I'm just saying, like, stuff like that does factor in slowly. Because I think, when a marriage unravels itself, it's not no one-day event. It's been a series of things that happen over a course of time that motherfuckers just ain't addressing. You know what I mean? And I mean, like, addressing with some real, like, trying to work through the problem type shit. Like, really trying to get on some middle ground and be like, all right, this is my problem. And I'm again, this is something I'm learning. Like, this is my problem on my side, and this is my problem on this side. And y'all navigate that conversation without getting to a point where it gets aggressive. I'll tell you something else, too, I've learned. When both people lean into who they are, meaning like, okay, like when a woman is fully her woman self and when a guy is fully his guy self, I think both sides begin to slowly resent each other. Because you got to think, and I'm just taking this from an overall state of, standpoint, right? When you're a guy dealing with a woman, a motherfucker getting emotional and upset and wanting to argue about what you feel like is small shit. And again, I use small shit in quotations because small shit can turn into big shit if you don't never address it or deal with it. Again, this is my recent understanding of emotions, that it's one of those stitch in time, saves nine type of things. But no, I do think men and women slowly begin to resent each other if they spend a lot of time together or just be involved with each other for a long time. Because there are things, I'll take me for example, right? Until recently, I didn't know how much of an asshole I was. Hey, and here I am thinking I'm just existing, drinking water, going to work and driving a truck and just, being a guy, right? Look, you being a man, you naturally are a asshole, and that begins to wear on a motherfucker after a while. I'm saying if you're naturally a man, like, okay, the type of guy I am, right? I'm someone that leans into my worst traits. I am a man through and through like a motherfucker, right? That shit wears on a woman after a while. Like, especially when you are not like, I would say, dense to her side of the argument, I think it wears on a woman after a while. I really think it does. I think it wears a woman down if you are a guy every single day of your life, right? Again, I think, when you talk about a guy, not even saying a guy, I'm sorry. I think when you talking about a 15-year marriage unraveling itself, I think it's a series of small events that eventually led to the whole thing cracking at its foundation. Like, I think two people have to really sit down and really decide if they're gonna work through the hard times on it. Cause I always say to myself, I don't rule nothing out, because look, 30 years is a long time to be with one motherfucker and nothing happened. Or the shit be perfect. Okay, even if you don't cheat, there's other things outside of the cheating that will dismantle it. I got an example off the top of my head, right? You remember watching Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy? And it got to the scene where the pie was on the windowsill, and the guy had done been in prison so long that he just ran across the gun line trying to eat the pie. I think that happens to people. I think you deal with something so long, or you just haven't had something in so long, or you just haven't, because look, to be married to a motherfucker for 15 years, you have to be comfortable in that role of being wife or husband. I'm talking about over a 15-year stretch. You have to be cool with that. That's essentially cutting off a part of your personality when you really think about it, right? Because you was a guy, you can't necessarily go chase hoes unless you and her have that arrangement. You can't necessarily just... I'll say with me, right, if you had to ask me, the thing that I've learned is that I need to take space to myself to have time to not give a fuck. If I had to really say something off the top of my head, right, that I have to indulge in every now and then. I have to indulge in not giving a shit, because giving a shit a lot of work. Versus on the other end, as a woman, I think there's parts of your life that you cut off for your husband, whereas you give a fuck about him so much, you almost become absorbed with this nigga, and you don't, you probably want to go out and really get drunk and be on some fast one night stand type shit. Not saying you sleeping around, but I'm saying you get to just live that part of your life for a little bit and then check back into being a housewife. Meaning, I think there's stages and parts of it where people have to just remove themselves from the marriage for a little bit. I'm saying because look, when you think about getting married and you think about being with a motherfucker for a long period of time, at what point do you get the pit stop from that? Really, I see people up and down my timeline slanging advice like crack in the 80s, right? No one ever talks about what happens when you done been with a motherfucker for a minute. When you don't really gave a motherfucker 10, 15 plus years of your life. Think about that. I can just imagine as a woman that's a wife and a mother. Because one thing my girlfriend doesn't budge on, she's like, look, I'm not being a mom. And the more I think about it in the grand scheme, it makes sense. I used to kind of tiff with it a little bit, but in the grand overall scheme of being a mother and a mom and a husband and a wife, right? You hear these stories about these women smothering their kids. I think that will make a woman's psyche crack after a while. Because look, to be married and be faithful as a wife, okay, I give the example of walking I worked at a nuclear plant, right, for 9 months, right? Nuclear plant work is one of those type of jobs you do for a couple weeks. I did it for 9 months. And let me tell you, working nuclear plant work was like walking a tightrope, right? They didn't give you halfway no margin to make mistakes. It wasn't no space where you could really fuck up. And I think there comes a point in the relationship where you have to be human, meaning I want to say indulge, but it's at what point do you check out for a second and really be all right, you step back and you assess, do I really want to be involved with this shit still? Because waking up being married to the same motherfucker every day, that's a choice. Whether you like this bitch or not, whether you like this nigga or not, that is a choice you have to live with. The more I think about it overall, over a grand scheme of 30 years, I think a woman deserves to crash out a little bit. I'm saying if a motherfucker's done been a housewife and been good to you that long, I just don't believe that a motherfucker's not supposed to do nothing stupid. Because you gotta think as a woman, right? I think women are used to making decisions more so from their emotions, right? And to be with a man is to always be within the structure. And being within the structure is cool, but 30 years of it? Like, okay, I don't want to compare it to a prison sentence, but I think it's kind of like a prison sentence. Like, when I was in the military, right? Every day, we did the same day every day, right? Or we had an idea of what... Now, as a guy, I function very well in structure, right? I'm not saying a woman doesn't, but I think it wears on her differently, right? Same thing with us as dudes. Dog, I'm telling you, if you don't step back from a motherfucker and give yourself a chance to not give a shit about feelings, you will go insane. Like, you will strangle a bitch like that. Like, if you sit there and always gotta, like, check in and give a fuck and give it, and I'm not saying this to be rude, don't take me as being a jackass. I'm saying as a guy, it is hard to give that much of a fuck that long. Like, always with the feelings. Again, that's not saying feelings are bad or they're wrong. As a guy, you can't, like, okay, you got emotions every day, bitch. Like, every day you feel some type of way. But I'm saying, with my understanding, like, okay, most guys don't know to the extent of how much a woman's emotions run. And I'm telling you, it's almost like watching a person's brain eat itself. Like, I'm not saying it's like, it's that crazy, but it's always like this. And do I feel fat? Do I feel this way? Do I feel that way? Does my hair look cute? Like, I can picture myself as a guy second guessing myself this much. Like, every week, every day, every second. Like, especially if you're just sitting by yourself in the house and you just got time. Like, your mind's just going places. It's almost like you need something to anchor you a little bit. But again, I do think over a course of 15 years, I think something does happen to people. I think you have to, like, know how to navigate that. And I think you have to actively choose to keep being with the same person. I mean, because when you take marriage vows, you are really vowing to be with this nigga or be with this motherfucker. You're taking vows, right? But I don't think motherfuckers really think in depth of, like, how marriage is going to play out long term. Like, for instance, right? One of the things me and my girlfriend are big on are being our complete selves. Like, for instance, I put pictures up on this motherfucker of me being at Home Depot all the time because I do, like, little side gigs and shit, right? So I try to... There's a financial space and a financial goal I'm trying to reach, right? That's personally what drives me. That and fitness. Those are my two things that I'm big on. You can throw the PS5 in that motherfucker, right? Well, actually, there are things that are authentic to me, and I exist, and I explore all those things, and I live that. It's almost like I'm single with this motherfucker, and she's the same way. Meaning, like, if she wants to hang out with her friends, like, I don't throw a curfew on my girlfriend. If she wants to be out at the bar with her friends, she wants to be out with her homegirls, and she wants to just exist and go out to eat and be with her, like, masculine and feminine energy, I don't think it's meant to be, like, up under each other every single second. Like, we spend time together, but we're very big on our independence at the same time. And I think that's what helps us a lot. Like, there's parts of life that I've lived that I don't care to relive again. I don't care to get married. I don't want to have more kids. Like, I've done the kid thing. And again, nothing against kids. I have nothing against children. But I couldn't picture going through the whole baby at 6 months, baby at 1 year, baby at a year and a half, baby at 2 years. I've done it already enough to know that I don't need to do it again, right? I'm cool. I don't like the idea of being married to a motherfucker. I don't like it. It's not the commitment I had the problem with. I don't like the idea of a motherfucker being able to take half. Like, that's just something with me personally. It's just, I've been divorced before, and I'm telling you, it's one of those things. It will literally upheave your life if you get married to the wrong woman, and it's not a chance I want to take. That's not to say I won't leave a motherfucker nothing, but motherfucker ain't walking away with everything I work for. I literally work 7 days a week. You think I'm gonna allow a motherfucker to walk away with everything I work for? You're crazy. I will go in the grave first. Like, I will die first before that happens. But again, if you had to take that same energy and apply it to my girlfriend, one thing she's big on, she's like, I'm not being a mom. I'm not doing it. Like, and look, knowing motherhood for what I know it for, the when I sit back and really think of it, it makes sense. Motherhood will damn near throw, if you are not careful with motherhood, it will damn near throw you in the grave. It will throw you in your casket earlier than you needed to. Like, I've seen women, I've heard of women having real psychotic breaks behind being mothers. Like, because there's so much that goes into it. I'm almost at the point now where I think, I used to kind of want a motherfucker like to be involved with the mother shit. But now that I really think about it, overall, I'd rather not. Because I remember when me and my baby mom was cool, and like a lot of shit that look, working with a woman when it comes to a kid, cool, be a mother, but be a mother over there. Right? And I'm taking a tangent here, but I'm really thinking about this shit in its grand scheme. I think I'd rather be a single father. Hey, the more I think about it, it's like, bro, I don't have it in me to argue with a motherfucker I send money to. And I'm not saying I send money to her, but I'm just saying, like, when that was the situation, it's like a motherfucker giving me their opinions and they don't pay for shit. Like, who the fuck are you to, I'm just saying, it's certain levels of arrogance I've reached in my life. It's certain spaces of being a man that I've reached in my life where I don't feel like I gotta be questioned, and I don't feel like I should be arguing. Like, bitch, if I pay for this shit, you don't get to tell me anything. This is my man brain operating, like, in single fatherhood. Like, and I remember trying to work with being a single father with a motherfucker that was a single mother. They had the shit they wanted to do, and I had the shit that I want to do. Being, like, I'm telling you, as a dad, being in direct communication with your kid, that's the best version of being a parent that you can be. Like, because the mother creates all the radio static if you and her are not on the same page. And and now that I think about it in totality, taking a detour here, it's about as least stressful as it's gonna get. And this is what I'm saying about being with a motherfucker long term, right? Women naturally stress about shit. Y'all think way more about shit than we do. You're way more, and I'm not saying every girl thinks like this, but y'all are a lot more sensitive to your environment. Us as dudes, I'm saying, like, the older I get, the more like my dad I see myself becoming. Maybe not the exact version, but I can see how he got there. Like, I used to think my dad was crazy. Like, I used to think my dad was unhinged, and I do think my dad is unhinged. But I think that at this point, I'll be 36 next year, and I'm not going to get on the age saying thing like that. But the gradual progression of a man, I can see how he got to that point. I can see how he got to the point where he spunked out of the marriage with my mom. I can see it. I can see how my mom ended up in the church. I can see it. Like, I can see how both paths diverged over a course of 30 years. I can see it. And I don't think my dad is exactly wrong. Like, being a 60-year-old man in a double wide trailer going to work every day and just wanting to get pussy on the weekends. Like, I can make sense of that train of thought. Like, so even when it comes to, like, fatherhood, like, do I really want another woman to argue over my kid with? Like, and me and London cool as shit. So it's like, the thing she can do now, she get on my nerves with the whole, hey, I just need $20. Like, she'll hit me about the blue. Like, the thing about kids these days, they don't even really want to have a conversation with you. Hey, I need money. Like, but you know what? I'm a dad, so fuck it. Right? But I can just picture if me and my baby mom was still cool. It's like, so you gonna give me $20 too? And, so how's your girlfriend? And like all the pettiness and the childishness, it's like, dog, who gives a fuck? Like, I can picture, like, my psyche being involved with all of that. Again, over a course of 15 years, I can see how a motherfucker would crack. Like, on either side. Like, I can see why a woman would be like, you know what? Fuck this wife shit. Like, I can see it. Like, when you really think about it, being a mother day in and day out, child ring day in and day out, I watched that shit do a number on my mom. Like, I love my mom to death. But my mom, when I think about the grand scheme of, like, everything that happened, like, okay, I'm 30 35. My parents have been married, 37 years. I think we were together 2 years before I came along, right? And if I had to say in the grand scheme, my mom got the shorter end of the stick. Like, my dad never stopped living his life, not one time. But I'm saying, like, in a grand scheme, my mom got the shorter end of the stick of that deal. And that's something to think about. And and when I hear my girlfriend talk a lot of times, it's a lot of, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to sacrifice myself. I'm not going to let no child wreck my body. You know what I mean? It's really just the woman version of me, like in the things I say on this camera, like, I'm not dealing with this. Because you got to think, as a guy, when you present yourself as a guy, put it like this, right? When I see certain couples and they done been together for a while, they're almost the same person to some degree. Like, I think the woman picks up traits from a dude. I think she takes a lot of cues from me, unconsciously. And there's things I take from her, but I'm just saying, like, the stand on business aspect of my personality, I think she feels that way about a lot of stuff in her life. When I really sit down and think about it, you know what I mean? Because again, I think being married for a long time or being with a motherfucker for a long time, I'm not saying you on some cheating shit. I do think it wears you down after a while if y'all are not keeping in check the things that y'all are about that resent y'all. Like, okay, as the relationship has progressed, I work harder than most people. I pretty much work 7 days a week. Like, I may not work at JB Hunt 7 days a week, but I'll get up. My Saturday is me getting up, Ubering, getting up, doing gigs, and picking up stuff from Home Depot and lifting weights. That's my Saturday. Probably throw a little bit of PS5 in my half of the Saturday. And then the back half of my Saturday is me spending time with my girlfriend. So it's really, my day is split into two halves, where it's like I work and then I come home and I hang out with her for a little while, and then I get up in the morning Sunday, do the same shit, work, lift weights, spend time with her on Sunday. And her half of the Saturdays, she gets up late. If she's going to hang out with her grandma, she goes hang out with her grandma. If she wants to hang out with her friends, she goes hang out with her friends. I'm saying there is a level of self-maintenance that comes to self. Like, we don't live the exact same life, but we live parallel. I guess what I'm trying to say here, right, is I think both parties, two things that I think it needs, if you had to ask me. One, I think a little bit of self-preservation. What that looks like to the individual, that could be different for man and woman. Because I think both sides need a chance to be their complete selves within the situation. And two, understanding for who each person is to the other person from the other person's perspective, right? When I say I've come to understand emotions recently, I've really come to understand it. Like, if she even feels a touch off or something bothers her, we talk about it right then. Because I don't need this shit turning into a 2-day argument. Now my emotions are getting involved, because I used to think it never affected me. It does on the back end. Like, because now that we walk around the house, we're not speaking to each other. Shit's weird. We're throwing shit. Like, okay, last weekend, like, it might have been last weekend, I got pissed off and I broke a plate. Hey, I don't usually get that mad. I used to get, like, anybody that knows me from, like, back in Hazards when I was younger, I used to get, like, blow my top all the time. It's not often I lose my lid, right? But I got mad one week. I got mad and everything. We was having a dispute. I grabbed one of our plates and I broke the shit out that motherfucker, right? It felt good to break it. But afterwards, I was like, damn, I wish I really didn't break that plate, because I felt like I let my control of myself slip for like a second. I'm being realistic with you here, right? But I think something good came out of that plate being broken, because I gained a different level of understanding. So anytime, even if I feel like it's small, or I feel like it's stupid, or even if I feel like it's left field, or if it feels this small or tiny, nah, motherfucker, we finna address this shit and talk about it. Let's get your feelings out. Let's sort it out right here in this instance. I'm not gonna blow off your emotions, because I don't. Once your energy's fucked up, you're gonna take it upon yourself to fuck my energy up. And I ain't got time to be on the bench pressing, and the bench press ain't bench pressing. I ain't got time for the lat full pull downs to feel weird. I ain't got time to not feel like going to work because my home is out of whack. Like, that's just me. And I think that happens over a course of however many years you with a person. Like, y'all beef about shit, y'all fall out, y'all have issues that no one ever seems to address head on. But yeah, as far as 15 years and, a wife feeling like, her feeling like that ain't her man, she might have really felt that way. It might start, I'm telling you, because one thing about being with a person long term, it starts one way and it ends in a completely different place. Right? Had I known my baby mom was going to be the way she was and the shit we was going to go through, the shit we went through, I would have completely avoided that motherfucker like the plague. I would have treated that bitch like COVID and came around that motherfucker with a mask on. Right? But you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Like, now, but at the same time, I've learned a lot from that experience and I've learned a lot from this one. Right? You know what I mean? It's just certain parts of myself as a man at this stage in my life, I don't feel like compromising. And I'm okay. Like, I'm okay with the trade-off. Meaning, like, okay, if I'm not going to do this and you not going to do this in response to me not doing this, I'm okay with you not doing this. Like, the more shit you ask for as a man, the more shit you got to give to a motherfucker in return. Like, so I have gotten to this point where it's like, personally, I don't give a shit about a whole lot of shit that society says I should, you know what I mean? Because that's going to require me giving parts of myself to that for me to ask for that in return. So I'm generally an unhinged individual. But whatever, man, like, I've talked long enough. I didn't think I had as much to say as I did, but the more I thought about it, it's like, there are aspects of it that came out. Look, man, it's Monday and I'm ready for my vacation. Oh my God, I hope this week goes by fast. You do with that information what the fuck you will.